So you want to make herbal teas? Well, that's great because I'm going to share how to make two different kinds of herbal teas, infusions and decoctions, which are both water-based extractions of herbs. So we're extracting the water-soluble constituents of these plants. Herbal teas are great to incorporate into your everyday life, whether you just want a tasty tea to sip, or maybe you're trying to replace a caffeinated beverage, or you're interested in the health benefits of herbs. So I am an amateur herbalist, so I'm especially interested in how herbs can support various systems of our body, as well as our overall health and well-being. So when we're considering making a tea through either an infusion or decoction, we're thinking about which method is going to best extract the healing properties or the healthful properties of these herbs. To make an infusion, you boil water, pour that boiling water over the herbs, cover it, let it steep, and then strain the extracted herbs. This is the most common way of making tea, so when you're pouring boiling water over a tea bag, you're making an infusion. So when would you want to make an infusion? Generally for leafy parts of the plants and flowers. So when you're making tea with peppermint, chamomile blossoms, and lemongrass, you'd make an infusion. You can make an infusion with a single herb, like with these chamomile blossoms here, or you can mix them together. So here I've formulated a cold support tea, and it has several things in it, such as elderflower, mullein, I think some peppermint, yarrow, things to help ease different cold symptoms. So how much of the tea do you use? Well, I generally use a teaspoon to a tablespoon of herb for an average size mug, depending on how strong you want it. I tend to like a stronger tea, so I'm going to use about a tablespoon here. So I bring the water to a boil, and then I'm going to pour that boiling water over the herbs. And then I'll cover that. This is to keep in the volatile oils. Think of how aromatic peppermint, sage, and rosemary are. Well, their scent and stimulating properties are due to their volatile oils. And so we cover herbs like this to help keep in as much volatile oils as possible, because they tend to dissipate really quickly into the air if we don't cover it. So I'm going to let this steep for 10 to 15 minutes. I'll then strain it and end up with a beautiful cup of tea to help support a cold. There's also such a thing as a cold infusion, in which you infuse an herb in cold water for a long period of time, typically overnight. A lot of herbalists prefer to make a cold infusion of slippery elm bark, because a slow, cold infusion better draws out the soothing mucilage of the bark. Decoctions are different than infusions because the herb here is simmered in the water. So decocted herbs are directly heated in the water to draw out constituents that are harder to extract. Typically, you decoct roots, bark, and seeds, basically the tougher, harder parts of the plant. And for example, you would decoct this echinacea root and these cinnamon chips. Cinnamon is actually a bark. However, there are a few exemptions to this. Valerian is a root that is used to support restful sleep, and it's a root that you would actually infuse and not decoct. That's because it has a high amount of those delicate volatile oils we talked about, and those would be destroyed if they were simmered in hot water. There's also, we mentioned slippery elm root, and that's that most herbalists prefer to do a cold infusion overnight. so that's not decocted either. So generally, roots, barks, seeds are decocted, while flowers and leaves are infused, but there's variations. So before you prepare an herb for the first time, it's probably smart to check an herbal reference book, do a quick search online, or ask an herbalist about the best method to prepare that plant. For decoction, I'll do about 1 teaspoon of herb per cup of water, but this varies based on how strong you want the tea and also the potency of the herbs you're using. For a more medicinal tea, you tend to make it stronger. This is a formula I drink basically daily to support my liver and hormone health. It has herbs like burdock, dandelion, chasteberry, as well as cinnamon chips and orange peel, which help balance out the bitter flavors of the other herbs. So what I'm going to do is put the herbs directly into the pot, pour the water in, cover it. Then I'm going to turn on the stovetop, bring it to a simmer, and then have it simmer for 20 to 30 minutes. After that time, I will strain it directly into my mug here. So let's say you buy a tea blend that has both leaves and roots, like this tea I have here, which is nettle leaf and dandelion root. Do I infuse it or do I decoct it? Because if I infuse this, then I'm not extracting the full potential from these dandelion roots. And if I decoct it, then I could be destroying some of the good things in that nettle. So here's what you could do. You could take half the tea and decoct it. After it's done decocting, pull it off the heat and add in the second half of the tea blend and let it infuse. That way it's a good balance between the decoction and the infusion. Yes, you'll be missing out on some of the constituents there, but that's the best thing you could do in that scenario. If you want to make a tea blend on your own from separate herbs, so you have the herbs separated at first, you could first decoct the roots on their own, then pull it off the heat, and then add in the leaves to infuse. So this does take a little bit longer because you're first doing a decoction and then you're doing an infusion. So you're looking at, let's say, 20 minutes for a decoction and then an additional 10 minutes for the infusion. But this will give you the best quality tea when you have a tea with herbs that need to be decocted as well as herbs that need to be infused. Again, if you want to drink herbal teas for their healing benefits, you need to know how to best prepare them. And so we talked about infusions, generally for leaves and flowers, as well as decoctions, generally for roots and barks, although there are several exceptions. Know that not all herbs should be consumed as teas, because some of them are very unpleasant tasting, and you don't have to force yourself to drink those. Instead, you might be able to take them as a capsule or in a tincture form. And if you're applying them topically, there are other herbal preparations like liniments, poultices, and infused oils. I personally love herbal teas as a way to incorporate healthful herbs into my everyday life. I especially love a tea after a meal to help with digestion, and also a calming tea in the evening to relax and prepare for sleep. And I think herbal teas are a great way to get started with herbalism. And now that you've watched this video, you have no excuse to not try an infusion or decoction of your own. Thanks for joining me today. If you liked this video, please support this channel by giving it a like and subscribing. I'm Leah, and I'll see you next time.